So now we have a hole in the end cap, and I'm fitting that for the first time. Yep, that's all looking good. That's the motor, and it has its bits of brass on there as well. And I now have the drive shaft, as you can see, screwed onto it. Okay, so here's the problem. We've got this motor now tucked in really nicely into the back of this end cap. Now I need to fit 2 servos behind that. The question is, how do I do it? I want to connect them to the end cap and around this. So I'm going to use this, which is a piece of Perspex. I'm going to bend it to fit in that inner circle, and I'm going to fasten that in, and then I'm going to screw more Perspex onto the back of it. How will it look? Something like this, if it works. There's the inner lip of the, as you can see, I've recessed the inside of this end cap. So I'm going to heat up that piece of Perspex so that it follows that contour, and if you look at it from the side, then there's the end cap, there's the motor. You're going to have this piece of Perspex running out like that. So the idea will then be to screw onto there a piece which maybe I might even bend with heat, and just screw it straight onto there, and fasten this into here with a combination of possibly wood screw and epoxy, something like that. Let's try it. Okay, so I want to bend this to fit on the inside of that. Now that is not necessarily all that easy. When I heat this up, it's going to be difficult to make it take that shape, but I have noticed that I've got this piece of bottle here which is pretty much on par. So I think what I'm going to do is bend it around that. That sounds like a good idea. Usual trick of heating Perspex. Now the final fitting is taking place, and I'm changing my glass jar. I need a different shape. And that's a nice fit. So you can see now I've mounted the plate for the servos, actually glued that on and screwed it on. And now just getting the holes lined up for the servo arms. So now we're in a position to glue this in permanently. That piece of Perspex is now permanently glued in. And you can see the screw holes where I'm going to screw where I screw the frame in for the servos. Obviously that has to be unscrewed if I'm going to get the motor out. You can see where I've screwed that in to the end of the end cap, and the holes for the servos. So what you can see here is the main shaft. That's the little recess for the O-ring. I had 2 goes at drilling these holes, and I filled these 2 unsuccessful ones with grub screws with some glue. This is going to fasten, this is where we're going to fasten the end cap in. It's a bit close to here, but we'll get away with that. These are these are going to have the rubber boots on them for the servo arms. These two holes here are for the positive and negative into the motor room. This slot here is for the 9 wires that are going to go in for the 2 servos and the speed controller. These bolts here hold this piece of perspex that I've bent into the shape of the inside of this. The way that works is that this will now screw onto here once the motor's in place, and that clearly will hold the servos. And that's basically all there is to this, and I'll go through the assembly shortly so you can see it once it's dry. But it's pretty effective. I think it's all going to be really small, and I'm pretty happy with all of that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just setting the prop up in here and just making sure that these blades are positioned evenly. It's easy to bend this material, but I tell you, it's sharp. Now these are my brackets that I've made that are going to fit into the hull. It's going to hold the end cap in place. Yep, it's about good enough. Playing with this a bit to get this shape right so it fits close to the hull. That's pretty nice. I'm using those center pieces of plastic here to make sure this is all lined up, so that this drive shaft is right in the middle of this boat. And here it is, and we are now ready to epoxy those arms in. I know this is centralized beautifully. And I've here used the fiberglass filler on those, and just making sure it's perfect. Alright, so here's a bit of a catch-up. I've been fiddling around with this a fair bit. I've had to adjust the positions of the outlets for the servo controls. I've had to play a bit with the... everything was a bit twisted, so I had to change the position of the controls. As you can see, that's twisted. That doesn't mean anything, really. So all of that is now done. And this is the rod, it's welding rod I'm going to use for the controls for the hydroplanes, and you can see that fits in there really nicely, fits through there really nicely, and I'll just put a ball joint on there, and I'm going to run a ball joint down there.